So today's clip is going to be about the word so. No, I'm kidding. Telement, tell the mind. Telepathy, meant. Right? So means telement in French. So telement today. So today, get it? I'm going to talk about the word heaven. So we know heaven is the exchequer, and hell is beneath the exchequer. And it's the debtor. It's the name in the debt register. So heaven is the ecclesia, the judge, the mendicant, the non-combatant, as far as I can tell. And the ecclesia is the priest, the judge is the king, the pauper is the mendicant, and the non-combatant is someone who's done a gypsy and given up the surname. Because a combatant has arms, weapons, what they call weapons, and your coat of arms is your weapon. And so technically it's not a coat of arms, it's a shield, and it's called a heraldic shield, and it has your heraldry on the shield. Now if you look at every single family name, surname, whatever, house in Europe, and then you look at the 12 tribes, the lion, the horse, the unicorn, the goat, the two up, the one down is Ishkar, then you got Zebulun is the boat, is the Viking, Nephale is the deer, Ishkar is the donkey with the two burdens and the one down, so it's two up, one down, so it looks like the three blood moons. It's that symbol, two loads and the body. You're not going to put a donkey on your heraldic shield. You're not going to look too fierce. So you've got these symbols that are the 12 tribes of Israel, which are actually the coats of arms for the whole Europe. People go, oh, Europeans claim they're the white Jesus and all this kind of stuff. I'm not getting into it. So the tribe of Dan, Ish's people, and Danish is the tribe of Dan. The Vikings have the red and white sail and the rowing boat and all that kind of stuff. So how can the tribe of Dan be the rowing boat? Well, you look at Zebulun, it's the rowboat with the oars and the red and white flag, and that's Egypt. Red and white is Egypt. Southern Kingdom red, North Kingdom white. And so they joined. They stopped fighting each other, joined forces to take over the planet, right? And so that's the obelisk system. And so what you've got is your coat of arms, your surname is your combat, it's your rank. So my birth certificate has a surname as a rank or employment next to it. So you've got on the left side, so that's down the centre of the page, is the ecclesia, the judge, the mendicant, and the non-combatant. So basically, CO means two, M is the C, and bat is a weapon, and ANT is a conditioned state of the mind. So that's the combatant. And mendicant, men is the root of mens, which is the mind. DI is of, and cant is the whole. So the mind of wholes. So you've put them in a stasis. They're not competing, because the Bible is an alien insurrection, because it talks about go and get the gold and buy slaves. Right? That's the first page in the Bible, basically, or the first few pages in the Bible. So I've got a document that will take your name out of the ledger permanently. That has ramifications, and I'll put that up on the next clip. The magistrate has to go to war with the heathens. That's in the Westminster Confessions of Faith. Notary gave that to me. And basically, a heathen is someone who lives in the heathland, and a judge or a magistrate is a citizen, a citadelian, a Solomonite, a Chappelonian. And so it literally means, a heathen literally means the naturals or the tribes. And so if you look at, this is going to come back into the reality pretty soon. We're going to start talking about police, patrol, legal, military law, everything. And I'm going to give some really good definitions, as good as the last one. So what's going on is you've got a Sodomite. Sod is the earth. Om is the sun. So Sol, Om, On. So Latin, Hindi, and Egyptian. On is Egyptian. Om is Hindi. So a Solomonite, as far as I can work out in the word structure, is basically the natural, and the Solomonite is the Sol, Om, Sun, Sunite, is the RH negative people. And so if you look at the Game of Thrones, and they're in the dragon glass cave, and Daenerys is there, and I'm going off topic, but they put it in the movies. They put all the stuff in the movies, and it shows the first man, and he looks like he's wearing a fucking spacesuit, you know. He's got the gear on, and then you had the children of the forest. And a child is civilly dead, and savage means the people of the wood. So we were savages, yeah? It doesn't mean barbarians. It means we lived in the forest. We were part of nature. The word book comes from beach, and if you get a chance, you want to get a book series called Anastasia, and it talks about if you get the seed and put it in your mouth and hold it for 10 minutes, whatever's deficient in your body, the seed, the plant, because the saliva of your mouth energizes, is the first moisture to activate the seed, and it reacts to the environment, and whatever is deficient it will make when it grows, when it interacts with the soil and the sun. And so whatever you're deficient, the plant will grow that. And that's written in Anastasia. And also the beech trees, we used to sit at the foot of the beech tree, and there's a little guy in Tibet called the Little Buddha, and he sits in the forest with tigers and everything, and he sits in this tree for 3 years, and he just moves around, and he gets seen every couple of years. And there's a clip literally where this European guy went to film. There was a civil war in Tibet and Nepal, sorry, mixed them two up, probably the same thing, but and they were a crowd there, and they were quite angry, and they wanted to drag the tourists out, and they said they were there for the Little Buddha. And it was like watching the Red Sea fucking part. So they were there for the Little Buddha. So then they went and recorded it, and they literally drove for hours, and then they got out of the car and walked for like 15, 20 minutes once up a trail, middle of nowhere. 2 hunters found him sitting in a tree, and they filmed him, and he didn't move for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, he got up, lit a fire, and then he stood in the fire. And this is all you can get on YouTube and find it. So that's a mendicant taking a vow of poverty. And so the Game of Thrones talks about how the first man, M is the sea, A is the alpha, and N is the snake. So first man isn't necessarily the Australoid, the Blackfellas, the tribes. I'm saying the classification of man is a biblical term. It's not. The Blackfellas have their own language. They have their own speech. And they need to recover that. That's why it was destroyed, because that's their power. That's their energy field. We've got a negative energy field at the moment. So this alien race is the Rh negative bloodline, which doctors don't want to talk about. The God gene they don't want to talk about. And so the children of the forest, child literally means civilly dead in English, Latin and American. And it's in English statute, it's in English law in the books, and it's in the Latin as well. So trust law is military conscription as beneficiary is a privileged rank with certain rights. That's beneficium and beneficiaris. And one of them means the good fig tree. And primus ficus is the autumn, when the leaves fall. So it's when the fruit falls. And so now you're looking at the trust law is military law. Its beneficiaries are rank in the military, and it's based on an occupation and an abandonment and fraud. Because they're saying you abandoned your flesh and blood, but you didn't. There's a reclassification, which is fraud, and then there's the occupation, which is a removal of the father, which is the male and the female. Mala and femala. Male is malignant, is the woman and the man. The man and the woman. And so, even though man is gender neutral, it signifies the male as well. I don't like using the word male anymore. It's malignant. So then you've got custody. Custody is based on lex loci, which is based on rank. So when my ex said she was the custodial parent, she was saying she was the ranking one who abandoned and gave birth to the child. So it's based on fraud. It's based on fucking big time fraud. And then you go to freedom, and freedom, if you type in freedom and you click on origin and translation, it goes to Latin licentia and libertas. It's variations of liber and license and liberty. Couldn't be bothered Googling it because I've got heaps of pages here to go through, heaps of photocopies. And so I'll print stuff out because, if they do the reset and all the computers shut down, I've still got something to read if I've got to print it out. And so an act done by a person is a trust or a corporation. So an act is done by a person, and a person is a corporation or a trust or an artificial person working for the trust or the corporation who's occupying the rank of executor, trustee, agent, beneficiary, or grantor or settler. So then what you've got is, I'm covering the word act now. So act is linked to grantor, trust law, and therefore legal, which uses the word act and actor, is trust administration by usage, association, and organism, inclusio, exclusio. Think of it like a plant. Like a child is stillbirth and abandoned, so it's not the living. So then I'll go to act, something done or not done intentionally by a person. So it's a person's trust, corporation, or a company, which is an association of persons, or the artificers I just talked about. And they are done or established, something that has legal consequence. So act is linked to legal. Thus, a grantor acknowledges the conveyance to be his act and deed. So now we've got grantor, act, deed, person, and legal. So legal, act, grantor, and person is all trust law. So it's occupational law based on the fraud and fiction. Then I've got the terms synonymous in civil law. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Lever Code. So the Lever Code, I've just got it here on the screen. And so the Lever Code, this is very, very quick, this one. I'm just going to move the screen over. So Article 13 of the Lever Code says military jurisdiction is of two kinds. First, that which is conferred and defined by statute. Well, bills, acts, and statutes are said to be the same thing. None of the acts in Australia are proclamated. That's why they once they're proclamated by the Queen's representative, she can't do it. She wasn't coronated with the imperial crown or the Stone of Destiny. Stone of Destiny would have allowed her to wear the imperial crown, and so she was given the Roman Catholic St. Edward's crown. So they just call them acts. But act is under a statute because the act goes into the King's statutory book. And so military jurisdiction of two kinds, that which is conferred and defined by statute, aka act. Second, that which is derived from the common law of war. Military offences under statute law must be tried in the manner therein directed. But military offences under statute law must be tried in the manner therein directed. But military offences which do not come under statute must be tried and punished under common law of war. So if I cause harm, injury, or loss, I've harmed you, I've damaged your property, caused injury, or I've stolen your property. Or I could have called you a puffer and people don't want to do business anymore. The Charter of the Courts, which exercises these jurisdictions, depends on local laws for each particular country. In the armies of the United States, this is first exercised in courts martial, while cases which do not come within the rules and articles of war of jurisdiction conferred by statute on courts martial are tried by military commissions. So I'm just going to come back up here. So exercise these jurisdictions depend on local laws of each particular country. So then we go to local, and local comes under, I'm just going to pull up the screen here so I can see. So local, if you go to Google, type in local, click on expand to origin and translation, and local comes up as locus, and locus is a seat and rank and position a soldier's post a quarter category. So we've got custom comes under lex loci, and lex loci is a rank. Local comes under locus, which is a rank again. So local laws is rank. Customs is lex loci, locus. See, LOC is the root. And so the Lieber Code tells you that military law is statute and common law. So if you punch someone in the head, you've gone to war with them, so it's common law. And if you break statute, that's military law. So therefore, civil operates under statute, so civil is military. Because they've done what's called state capture and civil conscription without your knowledge. And the vaccine is a pathway to civil conscription, and the vaccine is an easement onto the body, because once they put their proprietary property into you, then they've got a right to keep doing it. That's their modus operandi. But what happened is no one's got a right to harm you, so that becomes a tort law and becomes a commercial lien process, and that is higher above these statutes. Fraud, like I said, I covered fraud. I can't find it now. My writing's a bit too close together. So I covered abandonment, fraud, and occupation. Right, fraud is fraud. Fraud destroys trust, and fraud's fraud. Fraud destroys trust, and there's no statute of limitations on fraud. So now we covered custody. Is lex loci, rank in military. We covered freedom, which is licentious, and liberty, which is military. An act is trust law, which is military. A beneficiary is a rank of someone in the military. It's a soldier. Privilege is a rank. Act is trust law, for that, so therefore it's military. Legal is trust law, so therefore it's military. Administrative tribunals, because there are no courts in Australia, because it's all federal ex mercatoria, because they're merchants, they want to get paid, and they want you to be the beneficiary so they can access your trust, so they can get paid out of the Treasury Direct account. So I hope that's cleared up. That's that out of the way. So I've got 2 acts, trust law, Article 13, the Lieber Code. Okay, so now we're going to do I want to do police. So I've got a bit to read you out of the Typographical Society from 1950, and you're going to like it. If you like this stuff, you're going to like it. So pole in Latin means heaven, the sky, and celestial, and axis. All right. So think about the North Star. It's everything revolves around it, so that's the axis. And then the swastika, like I mentioned before, this is everything. Everything's backwards. So I can't do it. So that's summer, spring, autumn, and then winter. So up is summer, spring, autumn, and winter. So yeah, and so one going up is summer, one going across is spring, one underneath is autumn, and then the one facing down. It's like, think of it like a vessel holding something. And so summer holds the fruit, winter holds no fruit, and then top is spring and bottom is autumn. And so the swastika is actually the celestial map. The steers, they steer us, and they tell us what year it is, what the celestial position is, and the magistrates are astrologers. So there were no we 3 kings. They were a king is a chief executive magistrate in each state or territory. So they were from 3 different territories, 3 different states, and so they were magi and they were astrologers because they were following the stars because they're taught astrology. And that's why when the stock markets crash every 7 years, I can't remember the word, but it's a Jewish thing where they pull their money out, the stock market crashes, and then they come in and force them buy everything up. So when they went to the private, all the public was like, oh, we've got 41%. Well, hang on to that. And then what they do is they come in and they just all fucking sell, have a fucking plane crash or whatever, hit something, and then if you believe it, and they have a crash, and then all the people who are now the public who own private go, oh, it's crashing, I'm going to sell it because I'm going to lose, instead of realising it's going to rebound within 12 months because you've got a share of a tangible asset. And all they see is the number dropping. Fuck the number. If it drops down to $10, you still got that fucking percentage of that asset. Eventually it's going to come back up and it's going to have parity with inflation. And so this is the system. This is this Kabbalistic system we're under. So local means rank. I'm going to do the word, and so police, pole means heaven, I is the ego, and CE is the sea. So the heaven, the sky, celestial, over the sea. So that's what police means. And so the heaven is the exchequer, is the magistrate, is the mendicant, the normal combatant, and the priest, right? So they're in heaven. They're above the hell, which is the debtor. And so now you know the police represent the creditor who sits above the non-combatant, and then the police patrol. And so patrol comes from I've got it here somewhere. So police comes from I've got some really good ones like federal. You won't believe federal. So police comes from. Sorry. I was supposed to zoom in and make it bigger before I print it. So patrol, comes from patrouille, and pati, which means paw, which means animal, and gadroulier, which means dirty water. So and then so paw, dirty water. So you got animal and dirty water turns into paddle in the mud, and then patrol, and so. I'll just hold it up there. It should come up. You can just Google patrol and then click origin. I'll get the So effectively, police, pole means heaven, I is the ego, and the sea. So heaven over the ego, which is the police work off the chasing and adrenaline. They're the good guys, but they're not. They're really enforcing a bankruptcy, and they don't even fucking know it because they're too stupid. And they're in the sea, and so they wear the watermark on the helmet. They say, "Do you understand? You're under the exchequer. You're in hell." That's why they say hell. Hell speak. P is to speak. Hell o. Heliocentric. And so then you've got patrol, which means paddle and muddy water. And then the root of patrol is patri, meaning father. So the police are coming in, and they're the agent, which is higher than the public. So the authority is gold, the agent is silver, and so the patro, which is like father, but they're still, but the police are still low because they're based on ego and low IQ, and so they can't recognise patterns. Now I struggle with some of the IQ tests. I blitz a lot of it, but then I struggle with some. I go, how do they speak? I need to see the mechanism. Once I see the mechanism and how that particular puzzle works, then I'll just it's easy. But I don't have time for that kind of stuff. But it's just recognising patterns. They don't like you recognising patterns because that's what ciphers do. And I'm saying a cipher, but So police means heaven, ego, and the sea. So they're the representative from heaven, but they're operating on the sea. Patrol means they're on the sea because it comes from muddy water and to paddle, an animal. But patrol also has PATR in it, which means father. So they're the father. They sit above the dead, the public who are lost in the sea, which is mankind. So Pharaoh's captains drowned in the sea. So drown means drunk. Carpe means head, means ducks. Duke, DM Rex, Roy, King, Chief Executive Magistrate, etc. They all wear the wig, the cap. The Jew wears the yarmulke. And so now I've covered heaven, the ecclesia. I've covered the magistrate's got to go to war. I've covered the great Game of Thrones talks about the first man and the children of dead. I've covered trust law. I've covered civilly dead. I've covered customs, local, freedom, act, legal, trust law, because they're used in the same sentence, in the same structure, so that's the same creature. It's the inclusio exclusio maxim. Trust law is military occupation, beneficiaries of rank of military. Executor is one who must harass and menace. So the executor harasses and menaces the beneficiary because he has to keep signing paperwork to generate receipts so he can convert that into security so he can get paid out of the treasury. So you're getting a good gist of what's going on at the moment. And so I've covered that. I've covered, okay, so now I'll do, I've covered local. So reside, res, res in, I've got them printed here, so I want to print them out so people can click the screen. So res means chattel in Hebrew, and it means slave. Chattel in Hebrew, which son is chattel to the father, which is technically a slave. And also res in Hebrew means slave. So res, you can see that there. Resid. And so residir, re means back or away from, and sidir. Sidir is said to be so sidir is a sidir means to settle, allay, restrain, and calm down. Yeah, so back, settle, and calm down. Right, so that's it there in the Latin, but I'll do it better. So that's residir. And so res means slave and chattel, and IDE means to kill. So homicide, yeah? Homo meaning man, CIDE, patricide. CI is energy, and IDE is to kill. Fluoride. See, there's no C in the fluoride. FLOUR means light, and IDE means to kill. Kill the light in the cells. Homicide, yeah? Kill man, yeah? Patricide, yeah? So they had to put a C in there, patricide. It doesn't roll. Patricide, and it's the C, yeah? So IDE means to kill. So res means slave. IDE means to kill. Then you've got, I'll prove it. Then you've got citizen. CI is force, or CI is the C. So CI is energy, sorry. And CI is the C. ITE is people, and Zen is C, people, condition, state of the mind. So citizen is the sea people in the citadel, because it's all shipping, it's maritime, it's friendship, citizenship, the whole lot. Then the police turn up and they say you have to identify and you have to show us your identity. Now IDE means to kill, means dead. Ide, homicide, fluoride, patricide. IDE means they're dead. Yeah? So ID, ENT, so they're not going to put the IDE, ENT, ITY, because that would just give it away. It's id and entity, enten, ITY, or IFY, yeah, identify. So IDE means to kill, ENT means entity, and ITY is the state, conditional state. So identity is dead, entity, state, civilly dead. Identify is a state or becoming that condition. So when the police come up and they say they want your name, they want you to identify as the dead civil entity, the civilly dead, and the entry in the debt ledger. Right? You can't be a name. Any idiot will tell you can't be a name. You want my commercial trading identity so you can plunder my fucking estate. That's slavery, section 270.1 of the Federal Crimes Act, their own act. I'm not saying, oh, now you're quoting their shit. I'm quoting their shit because it's their shit. It's for them. There's US federal case law that says, I'm going to do the license pretty soon, and I'm going to do a good one on driving and the license. And so what it is, it's unjust enrichment, it's civil conscription, so you've got to terminate contracts with them. Civil conscription, it's state capture, it's fraudulent impersonation, it's personating. When police come up to you, they're personating, they're fraudulent impersonation, section 514 of the Crimes Act. You can't be disadvantaged from one state to the other based on the Constitution. The vaccines covers section 54, subsection 23, where it says forced vaccination and dental work is civil conscription. They can't do it. And so you've I've covered all the bases now, so I've given you. I've summed up that civilly dead is in Latin, English, and American. Trust law is military. Custody is rank. Freedom is ranks, liberty. Act is trust law, which is military. Legal is trust law, which is military. It's the artifice. Statute is military law, so therefore it's civil law. Common law is military law, so therefore it's civil law again. I've covered the act, and act specifically references a deed of the grantor, which is trust law. So acts, and it mentions legal and an act done to establish. So act, legal, grantor, trust law, military law, beneficiary, executor, it's all military occupation, abandonment by the parent, birth and child identification as those subject matter constructs. The reason why they're going to war is because we're waking up, and so China's going to come down here and wake up knock off all the woke people. That's what generally happens. That's what they want to have happen. Now you've got what else have we done? So effectively in Hebrew, Satan, it means adversary and accuser. So when you go into court, you've got the prosecutor technically is Satan. So you can call him Satan out of the Bible. And then the judge is the judge comes up as Judas. So I'll just find Judas. And so the judge comes up as the judge is Judas. Now you'll see there, right there. So you see Judex and Judic. Right. So I'll give you an example. So Lucifer, Luc, translates into Latin as Luxifer, meaning light bearer. Lux is light and fer is bearer. And Lucifer in English means light bearer. So L and X are interchangeable. And so you see Judex, X is interchangeable at C. So Judex, Judas, Judas, it's a homophone. Right, so the judge translates into it says Juig, Jus, I think. Yeah, so Jus. So justice is juris. Jus is juris, and so jus or jurisdiction is law speak. Right, so English is the jurisdiction. Oh, sorry, wrong spot. So the judge translates into Judex, Juger, Judex, Judas, Jus, disser, to say. So law, to say, or jus goes to eos, which means to bind. So to bind. So they get you to identify as their copyright. Right? So when you go into court, the judge translates to Judic, Judex, X translates to C. So Lucifer is Luxfer. So Judas is Judas. The vowels are inconsequential, J, D, and C. Judas, Jud, C, S and C are interchangeable, C, Se, Ce. So the judge is Judas because he works for the moneylenders, right? And the magistrate, the prosecutor, is your adversary, and the adversary is Satan. So you got Satan to your left when you're in court. You're on the right. It's weird. I've been in court, and the prosecutor's been on the left, and that's the debtor, the defendant, the trustee, and the agent. The right side is the creditor, the prosecutor, the grantor, and the principal, and the centre is the judge, the ecclesia, the mendicant, and the non-combatant. Now, the position of the seal and sign also denotes the status of the one signing and the sealing, incorrect position of an instrument creates a fatal flaw and may render an instrument null and void. Right? Null means no and void means nothing. No, nothing. Right? So what happens is when you do a document, you don't ever want to sign on the left side. That's the debtor. So always write your details on the right-hand side, like the bank, and your name and everything down the bottom on the right-hand side. Technically, you're still a combatant, but you're the good thief. The left side is the bad thief. He doesn't pay his debts. So you're using their shit. They're forcing you to. It's an occupation. So you're using their shit on the left side, and you want to discharge the debt, and then you become a good thief, even though you're still on the left side of the page. But you want to transfer that to the right side and put the bank on the left side, because the bank's committing fraud. Banks don't print money. They can't give you my money, and they can't give you my money, and they don't have any money. Banks only trade in securities, and you create the security when you sign. You give life to the document, and then they take the money out of your Treasury Direct account. They trade it as a promissory note. So effectively, I've covered the structure, what you're dealing with. It's military, it's trust law. Trust law is the military. I've covered resident, local, citizen. That's Reside. I've covered freedom. Dominion is master and lord. Magistrate, who he goes to war with. Article 13, the Labour Code. Res, identifying entity. Resident is a slave, dead entity, civilly dead. Reside means slave, dead. Identify, IDE, means dead entity, state. Identify means dead entity becoming that state. Citizen is a CIZN. And then you've got something called, almost forgot. Then you've got something called alien jurisdiction. So under the control of another as a lunatic or an infant, basically an idiot. And so because you haven't claimed your estate, how could you? They fluoridated you, they gave you mercury, they're using radio waves to zap you. You walk into a Freemason temple when they go to pray, so there's no Wi-Fi. Wonder why. And so if you want to earth out, get some wire, poke it through the arch, right? Fold it back, have it come up the inside of your shoe, pull your insole out, run it up the inside of the arch where there's no pressure. You don't want to put it through the heel because the pressure might damage your shoe. And then you strip the copper off on the inside so it touches your foot and the copper wears off and kills any bacteria in the shoe. And you have this come out, you wrap it around, and you have the wire stripped off in, and you just tuck it down the inside of your sock and no one can even see it. Right, so when that's in, you can't even see it. And you're earthing out when you're walking down the street. So when you earth out, you discharge the extra voltage, gets rid of inflammation. If you're getting Wi-Fi attacked, it does help a lot. So you're under an alien jurisdiction because they're not from this jurisdiction. So it's very hard for you to put a lien on them because they only give their name, rank, and serial number. Right? Their name, their rank, judge, constable, and serial number. A lot of states now are removing even the serial number because it's a dead giveaway. That's a military occupation by the bar by the City of London. Because even the old Commonwealth and the old state system, New South Wales Service, Police Service, technically that's an occupation as well. But the new occupation is turning on its own fucking cavalry. So you've got a blue flag, which is an occupant. So we were the colonialists, and not that I call myself one, I haven't killed any blackfellas, or tried, not going down that road. I'm pro fucking get on and live and let live. And so the colonialists that come here were occupiers, but now the establishment has now, once they've done their job and built everything for them, they're now turning on the fucking occupiers, the colonialists. And eventually they'll start to turn all the university graduate people who think they're immune, because when they get rid of all the cattle, and then they've got no one to fucking handle. So that's when the robots come in and they're so but you're gone. And they're fucking just naive. And so what happens is they've created a corporate entity which is now the property of the United States. So if you go Vessel United States, it's a Vessel, a corporation, a state, a territory, a district, and any entity is partially or wholly registered to the United States. And so that covers person and everything, human, the whole fucking lot. So now we've got this blue flag cult, which replaced the old red flag cults, because they work off the Bible, and the Bible is a covenant, and the root of covenant is a covenant, which is witches, where they sex acts, sacrifice, tallying, money changing, and court proceedings. Right? That's why, if you look at the words betrayed, so a word is created by a lexicographer. Lex means the law, so the word is the law. When you look at the word, it actually betrays the real modus operandi. And so that tells me that all their bad shit's happening in the fucking... Who's going to go and fucking do a forensic search of the fucking court? You need to get fucking authority from the court to inspect the court. When was the last time you heard of the fucking forensic pathologist or a fucking coroner doing a fucking... checking out the courts and these fucking temples? And it doesn't happen. Right? So I think we've covered a bit. Like believe Bel is war, L-I-E, ship lies in birth. So Bel is war, ships in birth is in safety, and V-E is the vessel and the energy of man. So believe, I'm mulling on this one. So war, vessel, ship's birth, vessel of the energy of man. So believe is when your ship is docked in the harbour and you're not at war, because you're believing, you're part of it. When the warlock came up to me, and I say warlock, and this guy was quoting scripture, and he said, "Aren't you a Christian?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know what the ramifications of that word are. I mean, everyone would like to be like JC walking on water, fucking feeding everyone. He's everyone's friend. Yeah, dude, yeah, fucking, all this kind of shit. But that was Son of God, fucking, you don't expect me to be like that." And he's going, "Aren't you a Christian?" I go, "Well, is a rooster going to crow 3 times? No fucking roosters in Penrith, and he's just fucking, fear God, yeah, fucking God's royal, Roy, God, royal, fucking Hebrew. And so I'll get this warlock, and I can tell they're warlocks, because they look clean clothes, look like they slept well, but they don't worry the beard and the hair, and it was odd. And they had another fucking warlock, and you hear the word warlock, but then you hear the word rant is to speak. Then you hear warden and governor. The warden is the governor. And then you got sheriff, shire griffer. Sheriff is shire griffer, shire reef. Shore, sheriff, shore reef, shore and the reef. And the ship comes in, and at low tide it sits on the sandbar, which is the reef. The sandbar is the reef, and the bar is the bar on the handrail, and only when you pass the bar language can you get on the ship. And then you become amicus curiae, friend of the ship, and you get free passage. And then the tender is the fucking boat that the affidavit, the Vic lowers, and it's legal. It's a leg. And AL, the alpha shepherd, tells them where to go. So leg, al, tender, carries the commerce, has life. And currency, current, cur is the bastard, entity, and sea, we're on sea. Currency isn't the fucking current. Currency is the man rowing the boat. Yeah? And so this is, our energy is the currency. And so now, how long has this been going for? It's only 43 minutes. It's probably horrible for some people. So then we'll go to the word federal, and so go to Google, type in federal, and click on translation and origin, come up FOTUS, right? So here's FOTUS. Sorry, because everything's backwards. I'm just going to take these glasses off, sorry. Read the screen, it's too far away. Imagine all the people. Okay, so if I can get that still enough. So FOTUS, that didn't look very good, but anyway, that's life. So you just Google federal meaning, translate and origin, click down, get FOTUS, then go to William Whitaker's words, put it in, FOTUS. And FOTUS is foul, filthy, So you got Foedus, Foda, Fodori, and Isimus. So it's foul, filthy, unclean, disgusting, loathsome, ghastly. That's the root of federal. Then you go down and it's got treaty, league, and still it goes Foedus, Foederus, is expanded to treaty, league, formal agreement, allies, amity, contract, compact, understanding, marriage, bond. Bond is a debt, fealty, tie, friendship, hospitality, law, limit. And then it's got imposed by nature or fate. So if Caesar so fated, you went through childbirth and he cut the baby out of the womb and said that she was dying in birth. But if Caesar turns around and he goes, if all the parents died, if all the mums and dads died, and we call them parents, which means to abandon by obligation, and I had a child and a birth, and we trick them into saying that, so that means it's a contractual fucking yippee gift. So if they say that's that, and that means that to us, they're giving it to us without them knowing. It's not our fault. And there's an old Jewish saying, who am I to tell you it's not a fucking, it's not a pile of shit, and if you think it's food and you're eating, who am I to tell you? So that's their modus operandi. So if they confuse you, they become the master. So basically, federal is a filthy contract. You lost the war, so you have to sign. Peace in Gaelic is Old Phoenician, and a rabbi who was studied Old Hebrew, so he speaks Yiddish, Hebrew, Old Hebrew, and Phoenician, and he reckons this Old Phoenician, when he hears people speaking on the west coast of Ireland, he started communicating with them on the internet, and they can comprehend each other. I was going to say understand. They can comprehend each other. The metaphor. And so they can comprehend each other. So old Hebrew, which is called Phoenician, is actually the Gaelic of Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and Britain. But the Germans come in and brought their English, which is their debt speak, which is the harm. So federal means a filthy contract. You lost, motherfucker. You're signing it. Now you're the debtor. So when you go to Pope Pius III and Abraham Lincoln, so many dead and so much in debt to the French and the Spanish, and the king funded both sides of the Civil War as well. What happened was they became debtors and heathens because they went to war. And so what happens is the United States of America became Federatum United States Incorporated, which is Federal United States Incorporated, which is a bankruptcy United States Incorporated administrative, and the Secretary of State became the receiver for the United Nations, and the United Nations is an occupancy by the European bankers sitting there, and if you look at them, they're all these fucking big cauliflower-eared motherfucking hook nose, and they all look the same. Even the Asians, they've got these big heads, big ears, big nose. You know, you look at Kim Jong-un, you look at Trump, and you're like, fuck, they're round and square-headed, but they're Asian, he's European. It's like, well, if you go to the book of Noah, Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Ham means burnt and brown. Shem means dusky, a bit darker than me. And Japheth means Caucasoid, which kind of looks like me, but lighter. And so that's the 3 taxonomies of the 3 skull types for the whole of the planet. And so the black fellas come in and go, oh, what about Australoid? Well, Australoid is said to be the root of all. I'm not going to get an argument, but Australoid's the fucking, it's the hard to explain one. So if you go to federal, it comes up as Foedus, meaning legal covenant, but it means filthy. All right. Now, if you go look up Foederati, the Foederati were the Vandals and the Visigoths and the Germanic tribes, and so Rome went up there and fucked with them, and then they had the treaty with them. Right. So that was a federation, a dirty, filthy treaty that you were forced to sign, and you give them a piece. They get a piece of everything, so it's called a peace treaty. And treaty comes from. It took me ages to work this one out, but it was so fucking obvious. Like, how can you not get it? And so treaty comes from treat, and Y is the consistency of it, run and runny. So when you sign a treaty, you're giving them a peace, and you have peace, and they get a treat. It's free. And so the foederati were contract killers and murderers, and supplied soldiers and gold to Rome for Rome's interest only. So I create these little algorithms and word patterns in my head so I can just vomit it up. So that it's a structure, and if I go to say the wrong word, I go, well, that doesn't rhyme with the next one or fall in line. And so the foederati were contract killers for the Romans, and supplied soldiers and gold to Rome for Rome's interest only. And so there you go there. So that covers foederati, foedus. I've covered foedus. So I covered foederati from my memory. Foedus means a filthy, dirty thing. And then it also means a covenant, a pact, a treaty, a fucking bond. And bond is a pledge, is a debt. Now, I've covered a fair bit. And I'll just go over this one page again. I did it 10 minutes ago, but I'll just do it again real quick. So, and then I'm going to cover the typographical society. It's just it's a beautiful little thing. So we know that pol means heaven, I is the ego, and ce, so it's heavens, the ego, and the sea. So that's the ego is the very thing that's easily manipulated. It's the move, and I in movie means they want to move your mind by playing up to your ego, and then you want to identify it as the star, the character in the Bible, the play, and so the star is to steer. So the movie will drive the ego and steer you in the direction they want to go. And so then you've got so you got heaven, and then you got hell. So it's the creditor, the debtor. Then you got the judge, the mendicant, the ecclesia, the judge, the mendicant, the non-combatant, which is the priest, the king, the pauper, and the non-combatant, or the one without surname. Then you got the magistrates go to war with the heathens. So they fucking expanded the city out over all the fucking lands, over the heathland, which is the tribes. That literally means the naturals. And so you got these Citadelians, or the citizens, the Solomonites, the Chappelonians, which I'll explain in a sec, against the Sodomites. Sod means the earth, Om means the sun, It means people. So it's terra nullius. Ter is said to be earth, the sod, the ground. Ra is the sun, and null is no, and I, you, and us, terra nullius. And so then you got the Game of Thrones talking about first man, which is not all man, but that's their copyright for their identity, and the children of the forest, which is the tribes, which were civilly dead. And you got civilly dead status. Then you got trust law, which is military law, which is conscription, which is a beneficiary, which is a privileged rank in a society based on the occupation and abandonment and the fraud, and the custody, which is lex loci, which is a rank in the military. And the freedom comes from the Latin licentia, license, and libertas, which means liberty. So when you've signed in their book, they get a license, and that's your freedom. So then the act is done by a person, and a person is trusted corporation or the property of an artificial and the natural person, which is a rank. And an act is linked to the grantor, which is trust law again. So act is trust law, person is trust law, legal implications of a trust is trust law, and it's by administration and occupation, and it's the same organism and usage and association, exclusia. Then you got Article 13 that says military law is statute and common law, so there. And civil law is also statute and common law. So military law is civil law, which I just explained, which is trust law. Then you got local, which means rank. Then you got alien jurisdiction, which means under the control of another, as you're a lunatic and infringement and an infant and an idiot. In means no, infant means to speak. So you can't speak their language, their bar speaks, so you can't claim your estate, which means you're civilly dead. And then you've got pol, I, see, so heaven, ego, sea, which is the police, and they patrol, and patrol means pour and muddy water, so that it's low in the water, and we're the sea of mankind. And then the magi would drown in the sea, which means they're on the ship drinking, travelling on the top of the sea, like Pharaoh on his barge, which is above the water. And then you got the blue and white below that, and then you got the people holding up the water in the Pharaoh's pictures. And then patri means P-A-T-R-O, so patrol means pour and dirty water. And so the police patrol, so police means heaven, and sea and ego, and patrol means they're on the sea. So the highway patrol, it's a highway, wa is God, high God, patrol, highway patrol is high God, sea, father of us, because we're under parens patriae, which means we're the parent of the fatherland, and they're the father. And the Bible says, call no man father. And then the act is something done or intentionally by a person, a thing done to establish something that has a legal consequence. Thus, a grantor acknowledges a conveyance to be his act or deed. So act and deed and grantor and person and legal is all military law, because it's all trust law, which is military, which is beneficiary, which is a rank in the military. Mr. is a rank in the military. And then I've covered Article 13, which explains local is rank, reside is dead, is slave, civilly dead, citizen is Zen, identity is dead, entity, state of mind, right? And then the name is the entry in the debt ledger, and comes from nam, and nam signifieth that which is the taking of or apprehending of dead, movable chattel goods. So the civilly dead is called ether vi, vif, or mort, or quick and dead, movable chattel. So anything that you apply the magical word to, the name to, and give it a name, then it becomes the property of the king, which is the chief executive magistrate, so they can come in and take it legally. So I've done a bit of work, and I haven't sat there, with a chisel and, typing away. I just fucking watch some clips, read some, watch some clips, watch some stupid shit, and then I just create the pathology in my head, and then I just get a piece of paper. That's all you need is a piece of paper, and you squiggle down points, and then you get another piece of paper, and you put them in order, and then you get another piece of paper, and you write a sentence for each point. And once you do that, you can make a clip like this. Some people might think this is good stuff. Other people might think it's a pile of shit. I don't know whether I'm fucking shooting above my fucking pay grade, or I'm so far under the fucking post that they're just sitting back laughing at us. Who fucking knows? So here's the Typographical Society, and I hope you like this. This is a very good read. So when a boy is bound apprentice, before he is admitted to the Chappelonians, it is necessary for him to be made a cuz or a deacon, in the performance of which there are great many ceremonies. The Chappelonians walk 3 times around the room with their right arm put through the lappet, so put into the lappet, like the Freemasons' hidden hand of their coats. The boy who is made the cuz carrying a wooden sword before them. The boy kneels, the father of the chapel, and the father of the chapel, after exhorting him to be observant of the business, buying sins, and not to betray the secrets of the workman, squeezes a sponge of strong beer over his head and gives him a title which is generally that of a duke, which is fuck. Duke is the head, man. That's a pretty high rank. Duke, dux is the head. Duke is the head. Earl is the head. Roy is a king. He's the head of the heads. Which is generally that of a duke of some place of the least repugnant near where he lives, or did live before. Whilst the boy is upon his knees, the Chappelonians, with their right arms put through the lappets of their coat, before walk around the room singing the cuz's anthem, which is done by adding all the vowels and consonants in the following manner. Ba ba bee bee bye bye ba bee bye bo bo ba bee bye bo boo boo ba bee bye bo boo, and through the rest of the fucking consonants. Imagine that for every consonant, right? There are several other Solomites. So a Chappelonian is a Solomite. Did I mention that before? So basically it infers that the Chappelonians become Solomites. So there are several other Solomites. The account concludes of the same kind belonging to a printing chapel. A printer is a chapel, but these are sufficient to show the sacred institution of it and the reverence that is due to it. Reverence sounds like Freemasonry. Thomas Gent gives a similar description of the amazing initiation ceremony. Benjamin Franklin, who worked in the London printing trade in 1725, describes how he was excommunicated for refusing to pay his bienvenue, right? Beer drinking was clearly a prominent feature in the chapel's customs. Franklin describes what he considered considerable part it played in the lives of his fellow workmen. I won't go on. But that gives you an idea that printing the typographical association, Muslim, and this is printed in this is printed in 1954. So that was a book that was gifted me by the Oracle. So I'm going to say thanks to the Oracle. So you can see now that you got two entities called Chappelonians, Solomites, a cuz, a deacon, and a duke. A DEC, DUK, deacon, duken. So you got 4 to 5 nouns there to describe a secret association with rituals, which sounds a lot like a coven and a practice of a coven with practices, crafts, witchcraft. I'm not trying to sound batshit crazy. I mean, I got people approaching me who are Rosicrucians. I got people saying, would you ever consider becoming a Freemason? That's a red flag. I get Freemasons saying, if you become a Freemason, all your problems will go away. It's like fucking, who'd sign a contract not knowing what the terms and conditions were? You know what I mean? Like, I can see there's fucking, Lucifer. I'm not trying to fucking go down that road, but Lucifer is Lux Fur, and it's Lux Lumen Die Day Diem, glow. So that all means, and day. And so when you look at death, DEA, day is dia, deity, DIETY, deity. So death is telling you it's day and mark the helix. And die is carpe diem, diem, DIEM is seize the day. So diem is light over M, which is the sea. M is the sea. So this is the sea. So it's telling you that when you die, your consciousness still carries on as an energy field. Because the physicists will tell you can't destroy energy, it only changes form. So when you burn wood, you basically carburize the cellulose, and the fuel is burnt off. When you burn a match head, if you look real close, you see a little liquid pool of biohydrogen sitting next to the flame. I used to work with metals and explosives and fuels and explosive fuels, and so technically I'm a scientist based on my usage of the products, and I was trained in the military as a craftsman, and we do engineering science, and we have to understand the mechanics of the steel, the stages of crystallization and interrelationship between carbon and alloys, and things don't come together, so we have to carburize it and mix them as a fine powder, and you flash heat them, they liquefy, and they liquefy into a billion tiny shapes, and they actually bond as one shape, and we call it a carbide. And they're metals that won't melt and mix naturally and form an alloy. And so you've got to understand the principles of and the interrelationships of how things work, and the different stages of structures and heat treatment and quenching and thermal dynamics and everything else. So I'm not saying I'm an expert, I'm just saying what I know, and what I don't know, that's something to be learned. So when you start understanding that the organic structure and the origin and the species, they only live together. And exclusio maxim is a fucking great maxim. And there's the glossa vipernis vocid, glossa vipernis carotid, whatever. The poison of the gloss corrupts the essence of the text. I'll keep saying that one. So once you get your head around the word picture, and you can go, that's that, that's that, that's that, that's that, that's that, that's that, and you start writing this shit down, like the ecclesia, the king, the ecclesia, the judge, the ecclesia, the mendicant, the non-combatant, then you've got the creditor, the prosecutor, the grantor, the principal, then you've got the debtor, the defendant, the trustee, and the agent. So they're the left side, the right side's creditor, prosecutor, principal, and then the queen signed at the top, in the centre. because she wasn't participating in the document. She should have signed at the bottom of the Westminster Confession, the document to make her the monarch. She should have signed it at the bottom, which makes her the defender of the faith. So when she signs at the top, she's acknowledging it, but she's not participating in the document. So how the fuck are they passing laws in Australia when the Queen is not participating as the defender of the faith? So she can't come into Australia under a crown, under any fucking crown. She's wearing a collapsed crown. What's a collapsed crown? Their fucking roof's falling in. This is your ship. This is your ship. And your fucking hull's blown in. That's not a ship, brother. That's a shit fight. That means war. You fucking... So the Queen didn't sign the document. The Governor General was fucking just in name only, and they say they're administrating. You know, they ceased trading in. I think it was when Whitlam sacked the government in 1973. Go and watch the latest clip by Stephen Spears. Like, I don't trust him, but he's got more knowledge than I do on the fucking subject. Anyway, but he basically talks about, everyone knows this, that when they sacked the government, they never restarted the government. They opened up a privately owned corporation called the Government of Australia. And I've held up the piece of paper with the that's a bankruptcy administration right there. That is a bankruptcy administration right there. It's a privately owned American company. Don't believe me? Then what the fuck is that? Attach our documents released under the Freedom of Information. I shouldn't have written it on the back. Requests seeking access to all documents that confirm that the registration with the SEC of the Australian government, now in brackets Commonwealth of Australia, removes it from the page. So registration of the Australian government as a privately owned company, and then it's got, number 333-163307. Right, documents relating to the registration of the SEC. Australian government is a privately owned American company. And then you see there that is a copyright and trademarked seal. And then it says the Treasury. And then it says Australian government. And there's a line between it. That's a separation. It's three different fucking entities. And so they've now gone over to trust law, where they've made us all part of the military. And technically we're all penal prisoners, because there are penalties when you commit an offence. There is a penalty amount of penalty points, and each penalty point's like $100 for $20. So if there's 100 points, it's 100 times 120, which is like $1,200, something like that. So 10 times 120 is 1,200, so that's 10 grand or whatever. Anyway, I can't think, it's too late. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. So they're penalties. So you're under. If there's a penalty, it's a pen and penal, and it's a penal colony, right? And then they change the name to state, and then they have privileges. Like my nephew was saying, you know, when the dog jumped up on the chair, he said, "Oh, you're trying to increase his social status." So social status is social standing, and standing is a rank, right? And rank means, oh, that's rank. It smells, right? Rank is the military. Milli means the smallest. T is the mark. ARY is your brain. Is a repository. The smallest mark in the brain. The smallest amount of knowledge. That's what they call them infantry. They're infants, no speak. And that's what I call them a soldier, because they sold their soul for money. Yeah, anyway, that's me done. I hope you like this one. So this covered local, means military. Reside means slave, die, citizen, C-I-N, identity, I-D-E is dead entity, state of mind. Identify is dead entity, state of mind to become that. Then I've got act. Now the act is based off the bill, which is the debt, because they're forcing us to use their money. Bill is a debt. It's undisclosed. It's an unconscionable bargain, unconscionable contract. I made that last one. Unconscionable contract sounds better than unconscionable bargain. But unconscionable bargain is a contract that no one would enter into with the right mind, and no one who's honest would trick you into getting into it. And then they have unjust enrichment, and it's fucking heaps. It breaches slavery laws, the whole fucking lot. Satan means adversary and accuser, and the prosecutor is Satan. So you can call the prosecutor Satan, and they say, "Oh, he's mentally ill. Get him section." No, hang on a sec. It says in the Bible, and this is all based on the Bible because it's the Seal of Solomon, and it's the City of London, and it's the British coat of arms and the crown, and the Queen Teotihuaca's daughter gave the stone of destiny, Ark of the Covenant, to Queen Scotia, and she took it to Ireland and went to Pickland and Scotland and back down to England. That was a stone of destiny. It's a coronation stone. And then you got the imperial crown, and this is your whole basis for your fucking whole judicial system, right? So because they're all Jews, moneylenders, that's what the king is. So basically, your adversary is also an accuser, and an accuser is a Satan because he's a shit stirrer, and then Judas is judge. Judic, Judex, Judas is the judge, so that's Judas, and there's Satan right there, right? And they have the little hole in the window, and the light's coming in, and that's Lucifer, the light bearer. Anyway, that's me done. So it's all astrology, numerology. I'm still learning this stuff. Like I said, every day I read a bit more. I should be reading 10 pages, 100 pages a day, but I'm slack shit, and I just got I'll put it onto clips, and occasionally I'll go back and I'll watch a clip because I'm a bit lazy and I put all the paper together. But that's it. That's me done. And that covers police, heaven and hell, military law, trust law, Lex Loci, pet parent, custodial parent, highway patrol. So patrol means muddy water. So patrol means a ship travelling across the water. So patrol means maritime. Police means heaven over the sea, maritime. It's all military law. Mister, they want you to be Mr. Joseph Gavin. It's a rank in their civil society as the beneficiary. The Bible says accept no titles. God is no respecter of titles, but God is a title. So God is not a respecter of the word God, because God is grantor of deed and grantor of dominion. And it's shit. I didn't even say that. I'll get this out of a law dictionary. Grantor acknowledges the conveyance to be his act or deed. Grantor is the first word, and deed is the last word. There's God, grantor of deed. If you're hungry for that one, I've got it written down here. I'll copy it straight off the internet. Yeah. There's grantor and there's deed. Done. Anyway, the things that make us smile.